welcome back, everybody. We're excited to have you here with us tonight for the Vision Lab. My name is Kirk Nugent. I serve at Oakland University as the media pastor, but also here at Breath of Life as digital content specialist. And my co-host is our fearless leader, Pastor Debleaire Snell.
What's up, my brother?
How you doing, Doc?
Man, I am always excited to be back in this space. I feel like we were created for this space.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Yeah, Vision Lab.
This is providence at work
absolutely.
here. And grateful that the Lord has allowed us to partner with just a community of visionaries and dreamers who are part of God's prophetic call.
I like what you said there.
Days.
Vision and dreams.
Vision and dreams. Yeah. You're going to hear that again.
You're going to hear some more about visions and dreams.
You surely will.
Yes, you will.
Yeah, so I'm excited to be here this Friday night. The weekend is here.
Yeah.
So no matter what you've been going through this week.
That's right.
Maybe it's been a heavy week. Maybe it's been a great week. Maybe it's been a down week. But guess what? You made it through the week. So we want you to exhale. With BOL.
There you go. That's right. Well, family, man, we always want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in and rocking with us.
Yeah.
But we also want to get your digital discipleship as well. Become part of the gospel delivery system by taking that link and sharing it with a friend, tagging somebody, letting them know, hey, the Vision Lab has begun, and we want you to join us here. That group that you always throw around ideas with, this is the space that's specifically for you. And we're unapologetic about the fact that we are believers. But business and belief can coexist together. I believe that's actually the way that God designed it.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's the way that it's best successful is when you bring your full self, including your beliefs, into the marketplace.
Think about the word. I mean, you had Joseph, who was a believer, but it showed up in his business. You know, same thing with Daniel.
Daniel as well.
The Bible talks about how they had great understanding of science and literature, but it showed up in their business.
I love it.
Their belief informed everything that they did.
Yeah.
So.
And I believe that that's what God is calling several of us to do. In fact, He's even placed something on your heart and mind that He wants you to bring to fruition.
Yep.
But you know, every time you get a vision doesn't necessarily mean that you have a season of abundance.
Sure. Oh, yeah. Say something. Say something, Pastor. Say something, Pastor.
Sometimes God is going to tell you to do that thing, and you can't even see the next step.
Yeah.
In fact, sometimes you'll find yourself in a season of famine.
Whoa, have mercy. Lord have mercy.
A season of famine.
Yeah.
And I know that's what we're going to be talking about tonight for our Vision Lab. We're going to be talking about seasons of famine as a visionary, as a leader. What happens when you don't see it?
Yeah.
You don't understand it. You don't have the resources that you believe are necessary. You see what I did there? You believe are necessary to be able to bring that thing to reality. Seasons of famine are part and parcel with a leader's journey.
Oh, yeah.
Talk to us about how do you define that, the season of famine? What does season of famine mean to you?
Yeah, so I just think a season of famine, it may be contextual.
Yes, this is true.
But I just think, if I just say fundamentally, let's just say in a physical famine, it generally flows from a lack of rain. Essentially. Right. It's dying crops, dying resources, scarcity, lack. And so I just think that sometimes in a ministry, in a nonprofit, in a business, it is where it seems like resourcing dries up. And so sometimes it's people resourcing.
Right.
Sometimes it's financial
resources. Right.
Sometimes it is confidence
or
belief.
Oh, yeah. I didn't think about that. That's good.
Things can change or go well. Woo. And so I do think.
Famine of confidence. Wow.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because I think really that's the biggest one.
That's the biggest one.
Because those things are without. But when it's
eternal,
it follows you. It travels with
you.
That
is good. I'm telling you.
It becomes portable. So it can.
And it'll leave its fingerprint on you.
It'll leave its fingerprint on you. Yeah. So I think that's kind of what a famine looks like, to a leader.
Yeah.
And I think the one thing that I think why we wanted to really talk through
about this
is I think that there is a misnomer that says if God is giving me the vision,
this part,
and if I am in God's will, that it will only be still waters and green pastures. But that's actually not the truth.
Never.
I think of Psalm 34, I think it's verse 18 and 19, where God says, many are the afflictions of the righteous.
Many.
But the Lord. I'm glad you repeated that. Many are the afflictions of the righteous.
Not seldom.
But the Lord delivers them from them all.
Yes.
Or even if we want to look at, Jesus' life was a life of vision.
Yeah.
Where every day he went into the secret place to find out where his Father was leading him. But notice that the Bible identifies him as a man of sorrows. And that he was acquainted with grief. And so I think
that verbiage, the terminology.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I just think what people have in their minds, this picture of success and what it looks like.
Yeah.
It looks like popularity.
Yeah.
It looks like abundance. It looks like plenty.
Yeah.
It looks like affirmation.
Yeah.
It looks like agreement. But I think if anybody that's been on the leadership road for any period of time
absolutely
knows that there may be spurts of that.
Yeah.
There may be seasons of that.
Yeah.
And sometimes, man, it can roll in abundance, but really the other side of abundance is famine.
Famine.
And so, like the same way that those good things can happen in abundance, criticism can happen in abundance.
I love that.
People can walk away.
People can walk
in
away
abundance,
in
or
abundance.
resources can dry
yes,
up
they can.
in abundance.
Yeah.
And I think the one thing I want somebody to digest is that famine is actually a part of the leader's journey.
It is.
It's a part of everybody's journey,
yes.
but leaders are certainly not exempt, not even spiritual leaders.
No, not at all. You know, one of the things I whenever I think about a famine, of course, you talked about in the Bible times, we know these different famines, but there was always this preparation for the famine.
Oh yeah, now you go ahead. Go ahead. I see where you're going.
There's a preparation for the famine. There was sometimes even there was a warning for the famine. Even we each have cars, and in those cars you have fuel.
Fuel.
And there's a light that will come on, letting you know you're getting low.
Getting low.
You're getting low, and so it's an indicator for you to go and refuel. But I always found it interesting in the Bible that there was always a warning of some sort when a major famine was about to hit the land. And when you talk about these different types of famines, a famine of resources, famine of people and skill sets, but a famine of your own confidence.
Sure.
What are some of the things you're doing in times of plenty to help you prepare for because if you as a leader know, because we can stop romanticizing it.
Sure.
The famine is
Stop
coming.
romanticizing
the famine. Every leader who's worth their salt is going to tell you, I have faced multiple famines, and I know that they are coming. In fact, I have stored some things away because I know another famine is certain.
Well, it's funny because, like, even when you look at the book of Proverbs, it actually tells us, hey, be tutored by the ant because he gathers in spring because he anticipates there's going to come a time where winter shows up.
That's right.
And all of the abundance that is lying around, you know what I'm saying? It won't be there come winter. Yeah. So there's a part of you that has anticipated.
That's it.
One of the stories that comes to mind is it's actually one of the visions God gave the king of Egypt.
Yes.
He just didn't know what to do with it.
He didn't know what to do with it.
So God gives him this vision of 7 fat, healthy,
and they
cows.
Look great. Yeah.
Man, and but then right after them, there are 7 lean cows. Yeah. And then Joseph helps him to understand that, okay, Egypt is going to have these 7 years of abundance and overflow and plenty where you're just going to have more than what you could do with it.
That's it.
But the whole point of it was, okay, I need you to store and save and prepare.
Put it
because
aside.
As soon as this abundance comes,
yes, indeed,
there's going to be 7 years of famine.
My goodness.
That is going to affect the land. And because they were prepared for it, it's actually, man, a very powerful story. Yeah. Because they were prepared for it, not only was Egypt able to navigate the famine, they were actually empowered. It actually became a source of financial liquidity for them. Because all the other nations had to then come and buy from them. Or borrow from them. Because
put them in another position,
right. It actually elevated them to a higher plane.
Exactly.
Because, man, everybody was beholden to Egypt then.
At that point.
Because famine didn't just touch Egypt, it touched everybody. Yeah. And this is why you got to realize it can even touch God's people. Do you realize the way Joseph's brothers wind up coming to borrow grain? Was because there was famine even in Canaan land.
Come on.
And so if there could be famine in promised land then,
it
can be famine in the land of promise now. Because God has promised you that ministry. Ooh. He's promised you that business.
Yes, he has.
He's promised you that real estate agency. He's promised you, you know what I'm saying, that music journey that you're on. But the same way there was famine in promised land back then, there can be famine even in what God promises you now.
That we're touching on so many different pieces. I hope that you're already writing. I hope that you're taking some notes already because how we is famine inevitable?
Yeah.
Is one of the questions we wanted to touch on, which I think we've kind of settled right there. I believe that there are seasons. We might not be able to predict them just like you would, winter, spring, summer, fall, but we know that there will be a season of lack and famine.
It doesn't always RSVP.
It doesn't. It may show up unannounced.
I think to your point, though, that's why I just think it's having clarity that this is an inevitability for all of God's people. That's right. So like my spirituality doesn't allow me to bypass this.
Nope.
I don't get to sidestep this because I really, really love the Lord.
Yep. He's going to shield me.
But he'll give me wisdom.
Yes, he will.
Discernment.
Yes, he will.
And clarity. And if I exercise self-control and discipline, I can be resourced enough to navigate famine when it does come.
So that brings us to a critical juncture.
Yeah.
Because one of the questions we want to ask, and I would love for you to be able to pose something in the chat, is how do you interpret the famine? Do you, how do you receive the famine? How do you interpret the famine? Is the famine
that's a good question.
Because you did something wrong? Do you see yourself as being punished? Or do you just see it as the natural outgrowth of what you're currently doing? Or do you see the famine as confirmation of the vision God has given you. And that opposition that you're facing, the lack that you're having to supplant and figure out how I'm going to backfill? Is that you now saying, because of the opposition I'm facing, this is confirmation now that what I'm doing is something God has called me to do? How do you interpret the famine?
Well, see, I think, I think the first initial instinct is, and it's funny, I can't really explain. I don't know if it's a byproduct of religion, but I think just difficult seasons always feel like punishment.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Like, man, I am being judged. I am being chastened for something I have done wrong. And I think sometimes that can be, I think it's a misuse or misunderstanding of the gospel. Certainly we want to be faithful and honor God in our life.
We do.
But, every bad season is not punishment.
No,
it is not.
It isn't
chastisement.
It's just the truth.
It's going to rain on the just
and the unjust.
Mercy. When you look at the story in Matthew chapter 7 of the wise and foolish builder.
Yes.
One man, builds his house on the rock. And the other man builds his house on the sand, right?
And I see where you're going.
They both encounter the same elements.
They both encounter it.
The one who builds on the rock, like that doesn't keep you from getting rained on.
That's
you know what I'm saying? You're going to get rained on,
still gonna
wind,
get hit.
and flood.
Yeah.
But you want to just make sure you're built on the rock because, again, everybody goes through the same test or the same gamut of tests in life. But I think the one thing I do want to just steer us away from, again, is seeing it, this is punishment. God is no longer with me. God is not going to bless me any further. I think sometimes we see that as maybe this is time to quit.
Yeah.
I need to give up.
Yeah.
And man, I've been out here trying enough. I gave it the old college try. But the truth is, there are many seasons that you have to endure. Where you just have to endure in those times.
Absolutely.
But this thing, and this is why I want to challenge us.
Come on.
Maybe we should see famine as a season of opportunity.
I love this.
Maybe
I love this.
There is an opportunity in famine that only the visionary is able to see.
Now we're in the bag. Now we're deep in the bag. Yes.
In every oil crisis, in every housing crisis, in every market crisis, there is somebody.
That's right.
That is going to come out of it with
man
in a way that suggests
it's just like
what famine?
What famine? No, what's wild is when we talk about we recently had a meeting of our entrepreneurs at Oakwood University Church. We had it actually we have this thing called OC High, hobbies and interest group huddles, and so we had a lot of folks there just chatting about the different business ventures and different things like that. And you know what was a common theme?
What's that?
Many got started during the pandemic. During the famine.
That's right.
And then coming out of that, a lot of what I'm doing, my entire business portfolio was birthed in the famine. I want to say, but in the pandemic.
Sure.
And so, you have to be able to see the opportunity. In the famine. And that's critical. Now we're talking about that's a game changer.
Right. Yeah. So I just think that you've got to be able to kind of really sit in this moment. Maybe it's an opportunity to not throw out the baby in the bathwater,
right?
But to kind of say, where do we need to pivot?
Yeah.
How do we adjust?
Ooh.
How do we add another layer to our services?
Yeah.
How do we reach young people or different generations, so on and so forth?
Who can we? Yeah.
Right. And
what
so
is the opportunity in the moment?
What is the opportunity that is missed? Because, like I said, somebody's going to be in that season of famine, and they're going to come out telling a story that's going to be so unbelievable
absolutely.
that only people of faith truly, truly believe it. But I just think that if you automatically see it as punishment, judgment, you'll never be able to see the opportunity. Or if you see that this is the time to quit, it's hard.
Yeah.
And honestly, that just may be an indication that you were never loyal to the vision.
Mercy.
You were a hireling to the vision.
Oh, my.
And you don't want to be a vision hireling.
No.
In other words, as long as there's abundance to it, I'll roll with it.
No.
Because you can't do it in an experimental way.
No.
You can't. You got to.
No.
You got to go all the way in with it.
Not when it's vision. Yeah, all the way in.
You got to see it to the end.
Exactly. That is a critical point for many to be able to harness right there. How you view your famine can be a differentiator.
It is.
In terms of how that famine will have impact on your vision.
Yeah.
And whether you go forward, whether you stop right in your tracks, or whether you thrive and you see opportunities that others do not see. Asking God for next level vision and innovative thinking in a famine can cause you to birth something else that you didn't even know was there.
Listen, I don't know about you, but as an entrepreneur myself, this conversation is hitting home. We all go through seasons of famine and we go through seasons of plenty, and we need to know how to handle each one. So this conversation is perfect for right now. Listen, make sure that you tune in every first Friday for the Playbook with Pastor Debleaire Snell. He'll be tackling all the difficult and hard topics, but he'll be addressing it from the Playbook, which is the Word of God. Now let's get back to the conversation.
I think the other thing that I'm consistently learning is that in times of abundance, God is blessing your ministry and He's growing your work and growing your team and growing your resources. But I think sometimes in times of famine, He's growing you. He's growing those internal virtues.
That's it.
He's growing faith. He's growing patience. He's growing resolve. He's growing resilience. He's growing your discernment. He's growing your ability to filter. One of the things about a famine, it's a good thing about famine. It is not comfortable. It is not peaceful. You hate it, right?
Yeah.
But people will walk away from you in a famine.
This is a critical point.
Become very much, they take on a survivalist mentality.
Yes, they do.
It's every man for himself in a famine. And sometimes in a famine, you realize who your team actually is.
That's good.
You find out who's really with you.
These guys are rocking.
And who was really with you because you provided an opportunity for them. You were a carrier. You know what I'm saying? And so sometimes in a famine, when it's not clear how it's going to work out, God kind of uses that as a filtering process to kind of move some folk out that are not a part of your long-term destiny.
That's good, man. One of the things when we look at a famine, and of course we've already talked about the fact that as a leader, as a visionary, the famine is inevitable. So we've answered that question. But we also kind of talked about how are you interpreting your famine and what perspective you're looking at. But now, what are some of the ways externally and internally that you can have impact on the famine? Can you control the famine?
Yeah.
Can you shape how the famine is going to eventually end? Can you have insight and a say? In terms of sometimes we can't. But there are some things that we can do to be able to have some impact on this famine.
Sure.
Externally and then of course internally.
And so
as well.
and one of the things I do want to be sensitive to. So for instance, if there's a housing crisis, a real estate agent is going to be impacted by that.
Yes, absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? If there is these tariffs, you know what I'm saying? It may affect the way products move on or off a shelf.
That's correct.
So you're gonna feel those different things. But I do think that a famine, it is an opportunity for you to say, look at certain things and really evaluate and maybe kind of do some troubleshooting. It may be a time for you to really look at your marketing.
Yeah.
What are you saying to the world?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So is this famine outside of my control, or is this famine just a result of the fact that, man, I don't really message well? I tell my story well.
Good.
Sometimes
we're
we're
from a different perspective.
in a famine just because we may not be leading well. One of the evidences of a famine is when an organization or a leader's mistakes become permanent. Like there's no mechanism in your ministry, your group, your organization
wherever
that is self-corrective. There are not good tools of evaluation.
Mercy.
You realize you can't be, you know what I'm saying, your own evaluator.
No.
Because it's kind of like
it has to be external.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like, your children. Your children are great to you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. But I see them as
But you got to listen to what your teachers say.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so
true.
sometimes we got to kind of maybe listen to our market. So like, for instance, just even as a pastor, right? I do, try to be, again, I tell church, I don't live in the comment section. There comes a point in every sermon I kind of say, well, whether you like this sermon or not, I'm going
to preach. I'm going to preach what God gave me.
But there is this part of this, if souls are not being won to the gospel,
right?
Church is not engaged. Church is not growing. There is a drought in enthusiasm and participation. I can't just turn around and say, man, you know what? Man, these folks, y'all don't really love the Lord.
Y'all not serious about this.
I've got to kind of look inward and kind of say, am I, really seeking the Lord? Am I going to the well? Am I deep in the Word? So there is a part of us that's, when you're in a famine, there's got to be some self-evaluation. So there are outside factors that we can't control, but I do think that there's some internal factors. Whether it's organizationally, whether it is inside of the leader that says, okay, what are the things, sometimes we misappraise the market.
This is so
true. You know what I'm saying?
This is true.
And
was that need even there?
Hey,
that's a reality.
All
that
those
somebody,
things contribute.
Contribute. Yeah. One of the things that we did here recently. In fact, I would posit for those watching, everything you're seeing here on Friday nights, Exhale with BOL, is us trying something new.
It's true. Yeah, very much.
This isn't us saying, oh, we're in a season of abundance. We're putting some things against the wall to see if it'll stick. This is very much the Visionaries journey. And in fact, one of the things that we realized very recently was our data suggests that our viewership is heavily women. And so one of the things you're going to see, coming up in the lineup here on the Weekend Exhale with BOL is a new show
that targets the needs,
perfect,
and conversations that women need to have.
Exactly.
So you won't see us, but you'll see a group of spirit-filled, anointed, intelligent, service-oriented ladies.
That's right.
That will help our ladies move further along spiritually than they'll be able to get by themselves.
There's no need to fight against it. There's no need to get upset with what the data is sharing with you. Let's ride that wave.
Or even just the fact that you're here with us on a Friday night.
That's right.
We started this on
That's
Sundays.
Right. We did.
But we started looking and saying,
let's
I
make
think
a shift.
There's a different level of engagement.
On
Friday
Fridays.
night, folk are winding down. Sundays, people are ramping up, getting ready for the next day. So then let's kind of lean into it. Instead of being arbitrary,
right,
and being saying, "Oh man, you know what? No,
nobody's showing up.
Let's stick to our guns.
No, we did this.
But there's no principle.
No,
you know what I'm saying. So we want to kind of make sure.
And in so doing, because sticking with that first decision, you can create a famine.
That's right.
You can create a famine just by being unwilling to listen to what the data is sharing with, listen to doing the work, because sometimes it can be painful. It's like, man, I have to kind of admit maybe I didn't, but I want to share with you. You are seeing this in real time. Living this thing out in front of you, that this is what it looks like to have these visions and dreams and say, okay, God, I'm going to give it. I'm going to give it everything. I'm not just going to, put a little something out and see what happens. No, we do a full production. We bring people into the recording, but it is because we're convinced that whether we might not have the config quite right, but the messaging that we are putting into these programs, we know God has called us to do. And when you have clarity on that, calling back to one of our previous episodes in terms of, having that fog, but when you have clarity on what unequivocally, this is what God has called me to do, you can be able to navigate a famine with clarity and with confidence. And those are some of the things that we wanted to share with you.
So we don't always get to control the external factors. You can't dictate the market or just the climate or what's trending on Twitter or X and all that stuff.
Or the president.
You know what I'm saying? Or the season.
Or the season.
That's it. It's funny because there was remember this? There was a company called the shoes called Hush Puppies.
Hush Puppies, yes, I remember them. Yeah.
At one time, they were like, man, the rage.
Yes, they were.
Then they went through a long season of famine and drought, they kind of really almost kind of bit the dust.
Yeah.
But then, the story kind of goes about how there were just a group of hipsters that would wear them around Manhattan.
Yep. Hush puppies.
And they would wear them to like movie premieres and stuff like that, so on and so forth. And cameras start picking them up. And all of a sudden, like this dying enterprise.
Yep.
Because, the right group of people of influence, kind of latched onto it, almost kind of like as a joke.
Mercy.
This vintage kind of movement.
So good.
And all of a sudden, this thing really became, it reached its highest level of success.
Even greater than what it was before.
Right when it was on in hospice.
Yeah. It was on its way out.
And so, but they literally in real time changed all their marketing, shifted, adjusted.
Yeah.
And it survived kind of what it thought was its inevitable death.
This reminds me of one more example of the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
The Stanley, dude. I mean, where did it come from,
bro? My daughter was wanting one of these things.
Yeah, they completely. Listen, it was only for men.
Hold up, explain to people what, because I didn't know what it was until Christmas.
So the Stanley Cup was this thermos. That people would shake and use to drink water or whatever, and mainly their major focus and marketing was to men, but construction workers, like we're talking blue collar workers, that kind of thing. And some ladies began buying them and using them for themselves. And I think there was one where the car caught on fire and the whole thing burned, and the Stanley Cup was still intact. And she was able to grab that thing, and she said in one of these social media posts, like, I wish it came in colors that were a little more feminine. And they redid their entire marketing.
And they're bedazzled.
Yeah, they've got all kinds of stuff
jewelry
on there. Yeah.
And so my daughter wanted one for Christmas, right? So we're like, sure, we'll get you one. And we go on Amazon, and the joint's like $80. I was like, girl, get out of here. You going to get a job before you get one of these.
It's crazy.
But it's a whole thing.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it has completely changed.
Yeah.
And it's because they were able to navigate that famine season. And they didn't hold to their guns. They were able to pivot. I think that's a really good takeaway as well, Doc. That a famine season is a good time to really start looking for opportunities, not necessarily to change course altogether, but to pivot slightly in your approach. You know what God has asked you to do, but maybe the packaging needs to be changed a little bit. Maybe your strategy can be amended some.
And if I could just say this word to pastors, to ministry leaders specifically, because what we tend to do in seasons of famine is we tend to confuse content and container. Like the gospel is what it is. The message of the truth is what it is. That is the content. But the container, the way we present it to the world, that is a time for us to look at it. Because what we tend to do, it's funny because you even look at a drink like Coca-Cola. Like there are like a billion iterations of the Coca-Cola bottle and can. Because what they simply notice is that it's the same little nasty tonic. But what they do is they realize at different times people are responding to different colors, different forms, different, what do they call it? The fonts.
So true.
Italics,
so true.
Things.
The design.
But the container is still the exact same thing. And so the reason I'm saying this is because sometimes what we do in churches is that sometimes the church can be the only entity that curses the market for not responding.
Come on.
So, for instance, let's just say, Nike sales go down 4 quarters in a row.
No.
Nike doesn't wake up and be like, well, y'all folk don't know real style. You know what I'm saying?
Never,
y'all don't understand what it is. What they start doing is they engage their market.
That's right.
And see, sometimes, unfortunately, in church world, when the market stops responding, we blame the market. We blame the young people for not responding, or we blame the community for not responding, or we blame the larger church for why they're not buying into this idea. Why aren't they coming? Or why aren't they coming back after the pandemic?
So true.
And instead of saying, no, we got to reset. And we got to look at our offerings. We got to look at our messaging. We got to look at how it is we're doing things and figure out a way, because see, there's a time when you get away with saying, you know what, you should be in church.
You should.
That's your duty. Something's wrong with you.
You used to be able to do that,
No, they're just going to take their device and they're going to scroll over to this church, that church, maybe Oakwood, who knows?
I'm telling you. I'm telling you.
But what I'm saying is you cannot curse the market.
No.
You got to re-engage it. And figure out a way to draw buy-in. And that's my prayer for the body of Christ, because I want to see the body of Christ thrive. I want to see it prosper. I want to see scores and scores of young people, and people of every generation and every color receive this good news that has so radically changed my life. And so again, we're not changing the content, but we're simply saying, let's look at the container and figure out how we can put it before more and more people.
I think that's a great place. I'm hoping that you guys got a lot out of this of Experience Day. Any final messages we want to share with folks as we kind of wrap up today's episode on the season of famine? There's some of the takeaways that you should have in your notes. It is inevitable. It is inevitable. Yep. You need to check your interpretation of it. You need to be aware that you are actually in a famine.
In the famine.
You know, sometimes the famine can it's starting, but it has not hit its peak yet. And you want to be sensitive to the fact that the season has changed. And you move a little bit differently. How are you preparing for an inevitable famine? And then are you able to pivot? Are you able to see opportunities when others only see the lack? That is what the visionary is called to do, especially as they're going to bring some of these things to fruition. Any final messages, Doc?
And so I just think there's somebody that just the word for you is endure.
Endure.
It touches all of us. I've had famines in writing seasons, in some personal ventures, in some church ventures, and even here at Breath of Life, we had some famine moments.
We do.
And it wasn't saying that we need to quit, that I need to give up, that I need to find something else to do. There were just some times where there's some things that God needed to grow in me.
Exactly.
Because one of the things I've come to believe is that your outer abundance should never grow faster than your inner character.
Mercy.
And so sometimes, man, God sees, man, the gifts or maybe the income or the people or the team, and it's growing, but man, inside it's wilting.
Mercy.
And God says, let me kind of put a halt on this temporarily. And let me grow that patience.
Mercy.
Let me help that faith catch up. Let that prayer life catch up. Let me make sure they don't abandon their health or family too much longer. Because if it gets away from them, then they will never turn inwardly and take a look at those things that are going to be beyond this world that translate from this life to the next.
That's so good. It's so good. I received that for myself today. I want to be honest. Even as we're talking, I'm thinking of different scenarios and situations in my own life and business and ventures and vision that I believe God is speaking clearly to us today. This has been so rich. Listen, don't just enjoy this by yourself, y'all. You want to make sure you share and share and share again. Tag a friend. Have those conversations. One of the things that I firmly believe, especially for the visionary, is you don't necessarily talk to everybody.
Amen.
You're not everybody, but if you know that there's one or two that also have been blessed with the gift of visions and dreams, you want to be able to have some of those conversations. And I think that this episode is one that will spark some very meaningful and deep conversations.
Very much.
Especially as you turn that light inward for some introspection to see, how have I been handling my famines? Clearly, we have all experienced them. But how have I been handling them? And we want to make sure you go away with that tonight.
And I think that's key. It's not whether or not I have famine. The only really question is at hand is, how am I going to deal with it?
How am I dealing with it? How am I dealing with it? So, family, be blessed. We hope that you come back on another Friday night to come hang out with us for the Weekend Exhale with BOL. Whether it is Vision Lab or the Playbook or Point of View, Girls Night In, or what just happened, we would love for you to be able to hang with us. And again, leave us a comment below. We'll be engaging with you there. Tag, share somebody, make sure. And if you haven't subscribed already, come on. Join the Breathe fam. Hit that subscribe button. Make sure the notification bell is turned on so that you can be updated every time we post new content or we have some new live shows. Thank you so much for hanging with us tonight. Be blessed. We pray God's richest favor on you.
What's good, family? Joel 2:28 says that in the last days, I'm going to pour out my spirit on all flesh. Your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your young men will dream dreams, and your old men are going to see visions. I want you to know, family, that we are living in the age of visions and dreams. That's why I want to invite you to our second annual Breath of Life Vision and Dreamers Conference. Last year, hundreds of you came from all over the country, and we had a great time of instruction and inspiration. But this year, we're going to do it even bigger. Make sure you save the date for November the 7th through the 9th for this year's Vision and Dreamers Conference. We're going to be blessed by the awesome ministry of the hip hop preacher, Dr. Eric Thomas is going to be here. We're going to hear from the leading leadership voice of our generation, author John Maxwell. Then we're going to also be blessed by the ministry of entrepreneur and visionary Tabitha Brown, and I'll be here to assist along the way. If you're an entrepreneur, a content creator, a speaker, an author, I need you to know that this conference is for you. It's going to be the biggest conference to ever hit the city of Huntsville, and it's going to be one of the most impactful occurrences of your life. So if you want to register, I want to encourage you to do it right now. Get the early bird special. You can register to come in and be in person, or you can register to attend the event online. But there's a limited amount of space for those in-person attendees. So go right now to our website and register at www.breathoflife.tv. It's going to be an immense time of instruction, food, fellowship, networking, and your visions and dreams will be empowered to be moved from just a concept to a truth and reality. God bless. I look forward to seeing you there.
Yes, we love that episode. Listen, thank you so much for joining us in the Weekend Exhale with BOL. We could not do this without your support. Please visit our website at breathoflife.tv so you can see how your amazing support can bring more programming like this. And after you do that, we want you to click over here to see more content from BOL, see episodes you may have missed. Come on, don't be shy. Click over here.